Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you're from. Welcome to this webinar, early webinar series of RWSN. If you're just coming in, welcome. My name is Muti Ishema. I am the theme lead for the Data for Action thematic group of RWSN. And this webinar is entitled Making Data Work for Climate Financing. For those of you, wonderful. We are seeing people from Uganda. We are seeing people, Azerbaijan, welcome to the webinar. Sudan, that's wonderful. It looks like we are truly a global community. Oh, Scotland, Senegal, welcome to this webinar. And Zambia, welcome. Mulibwanji takulandirani. And all other countries. Please keep putting your details in the chat so that we know where you're from. Now, for those of you for whom this is the first RWSN webinar, a very quick introduction. RWSN, short for Rural Water Supply Network, is a global community, a global family of 10,000 members. These are organizations and professionals that are working to improve and sustain safe water access for the rural poor in low and middle income countries around the world. So that is the business that we're in. But one of the other things we do as RWSN, we have thematic groups, and we have several thematic groups that you can be a member of if you're not yet a member of RWSN. This particular thematic group is Data for Action, where we try to go beyond the frameworks and the tools of data collection and analysis. And we try to look at how can we use data for all the actions that we need to take. And today, we are looking at how we can use WASH data to unlock climate financing. So that is the session for the day. We're looking at how we can use data to unlock climate financing. So welcome to this webinar today. This is our agenda for the day. We've, of course, kicked off with some welcoming and opening remarks, and we're going to have a small poll during the day, but these are our speakers from all over the world. We have Amy, who is actually on the East Coast, if I'm not mistaken, of the USA right now, so it's early morning for her. We have Marlene, who is in Nairobi, so she's kind of in the same time zone with where I am in Malawi. And of course, we've got Dr. Bapon, who is in South Korea. So when I said we are a global family, we are truly global. And after the presentations, each presenter will have 15 minutes. We will have Q&A where we will engage and get your questions to the speakers. And as I mentioned, there's a Q&A button at the bottom where you can put your questions as and when that opportunity arises. And of course, we'll have closing remarks. The entire session will last exactly 90 minutes. As I mentioned, my name is Muti Ishema. I work with Baseflow, which is a local organization based in Malawi, but I'm also the theme lead for the Rural Water Supply Network Data for Action group. So that is who I am, and I will be your moderator today to moderate the entire session of the day. Please keep putting your name and your country in the chat. I've seen Cameroon, and I'm seeing several other countries showing up in the chat. Welcome to this webinar for making data work for climate financing, where we are looking to unlock climate financing. And as we all know, accessing climate financing is a growing priority for rural WASH professionals and rural WASH programs across the world. But successfully unlocking this funding depends on one critical asset: the right data. What is the data that we actually need, or the impact data we actually need to unlock climate financing? And how do organizations reconfigure or adjust themselves to access that climate financing so that they are collecting the right data in the right way and presenting it in a way that will enable the unlocking of that climate financing? But also, What are some of the missteps? What are some of the assumptions around climate financing when it comes to WASH data? Those are some of the questions we'll be looking at today to try and learn from our speakers who are at different stages of their evolution when it comes to climate financing, to learn what they have learned, what they have gained, and share it with all of us here. So that is the purpose of this webinar, to explore how leveraging WASH data can be a powerful tool for unlocking climate financing and also diversifying funding streams for rural water programs across the world. So that is why we're here, to learn at how we can make data work for climate financing. And now, on that note, I know you're all excited to jump into this particular conversation, and we're getting there. Don't worry, we're getting there. But we want to get a sense of your experience as members attending this particular session. You will see two poll questions. The first question: have you or your organization ever successfully used WASH-related data to access climate financing? That is the first question, and that is a single choice question, so you can only answer one. That is the first question. The second question on the poll, you have to scroll down because there are several options, and this one is my favorite question. So when you answer your first question, go to the second one. Which of the following WASH projects do you believe could be eligible for climate financing? Which of the following WASH projects do you believe could be eligible for climate financing? This is a multiple choice question, so you can pick more than one. Is it solar-powered water supply systems? Is it distribution of water filters? Is it gray water reuse? Which one do you believe should be eligible for climate financing? So, on this note, please fill out the poll and let's see what responses come through. Oh, nice. We are at 61% response rate. Those of you who are joining, please hurry, hurry, hurry. Respond to the questions that are there before they close, and they're about to close shortly. The two poll questions, and they're closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll is closing. There it goes. Sorry for those of you who are just joining us. Welcome to the session. Let's look at some of your responses. Oh, we have South Africa, Nepal. Welcome to the session. Let's look at some of your responses today. The first question was, what have you or your organization ever successfully used WASH-related data to access climate financing? It seems the majority of you is no, we haven't or don't know where to start. Next is yes, we've successfully secured climate financing using WASH data. It would be interesting to see your experience during the Q&A. Let's move, and the second one, let's see, which of the following WASH projects do you believe could be eligible for climate financing? Wow, a lot of you say solar-powered water supply systems. That seems to be a popular one. Rehabilitation of existing water infrastructure. That's the second most popular. And then flood-proofing water infrastructure, raising hand pumps. Interesting. And of course, rainwater harvesting and storage systems. Thank you. On this note, I want to bring in one of our speakers who I'll introduce properly later on during the session, and that is Dr. Bapon from the Green Climate Fund. What are your reflections on the results that you're seeing, especially with the first question? It seems quite a number of people, the majority, have not really accessed climate financing or have collected the data to access climate financing. Is that a surprise to you from your line of work?
It's not a surprise because when you're talking about the WASH or water security issue on climate change, and accessing climate finance, because it's a little bit different financing than the development financing or other financing that are available. The fundamental for climate financing is that actually you need to create a climate action, any activities. But when you're talking about the WASH, understanding the WASH about the climate change, it requires some data-driven analytics, evidence-based research, because you're talking about a small catchment, small household level activities. And there is actually often gaps to find those kind of data set or those kind of analytics who can actually run those kind of models to come up with those kind of evidence. And that's what we call like sometimes a theory of change. So based on the
Yeah.
climate indices, you try to define the climate risk based on you come up with adaptation option. And because of that kind of lacking on the knowledge, it is a difficulties to accessing the financing. I'll cover more on my talk later on.
Yes, thank you. No, thank you for that, particularly what you were saying about you need to have a theory of change that links the WASH to climate. Going to the second question very quickly. Any surprises here of things that people believe should be getting climate financing, but from your experience, maybe they should not? From your general view, I know you will share more during your presentation. What's your general view of the choices people have made here?
No, that there are quite relevant choices here, but also you need to look at actually that when you want to access a climate finance, especially, and there could be a different vertical climate financing available in the market. It's not only GCF, but also JEF, Adaptation Fund, and SIF. And you need to bring in every of those financing a paradigm shift because you're saying a climate change creating an emerging problem. And if you want to solve the emerging problem, you need to come up with innovation. And you can actually think about all the solution that you're actually proposing here. Is this an innovative solution? Or is actually the traditionality you try to maintain? And
Oh,
where is actually that paradigm shift is working? So you need to bring that aspect when you're designing a programming.
so you need to bring the aspect of innovating and really ask yourself, is this the business as usual, or is this an actual innovation that's solving the problem and linking to climate action? Very interesting. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Papon is very big on innovation. So we're going to hear a lot more during his presentation. Thank you very much. I'll introduce him properly a little later. This was just a sneak peek of some of the things we're going to have together today. And of course, I've talked enough about me. Let's move to our first presenter of the day, it's very early for her on the East Coast of America. And her name is Amy Nyhoff, and she's the Carbon Credit Program Manager for Water Missions. She holds a master's degree from the University of St. Andrews and has a broad background in development and international relations. But the thing I find interesting about her is that she specializes in crediting WASH-related community projects, leveraging her expertise in budgeting, cash flow analysis, and work planning for sustainability. That is Amy Nyhoff. And on that note, I hand over to you. Your 15 minutes in the spotlight of fame, Amy. Over to you.
Yes, great. Thank you, and good day, everyone. I'm excited to be here, and it's a privilege to represent Water Mission for this discussion on making data work for climate finance. So we've been on this journey for about 4.5 years, just strengthening our own data systems and impact measurement to better support this climate financing opportunity. And I'm just excited to share how we've integrated climate finance into our project initiatives, how we've improved project outcome tracking, and just how we've aligned some of our internal data processes in order to meet these stringent carbon credit requirements. And so along the way, we've learned some valuable lessons and uncovered a few pitfalls to avoid. And so I'm just looking forward to sharing all of that with you today. Right, so some of you may know us. Water Mission is a Christian engineering nonprofit that provides sustainable wash solutions in developing countries and disaster areas. We've served more than 8 million people in 60 plus nations to date through field offices across Africa, Latin America, and Southeast Asia. And just as climate challenges grow and funding gaps persist in the sector, climate finance is becoming a crucial part of our mission to deliver and to finance these safe water solutions. Our climate finance efforts are focused in East Africa, where we've found a clear carbon credit methodology that supports our work. So we operate in Tanzania, Kenya, Malawi, and Uganda. So Tanzania was our first program to pass audit and receive gold standard carbon credits. And this milestone really gave us the confidence to then expand, more across the region. So to date, we've been issued 72,500 credits with 142,000 expected by the end of 2026, just with projects in the pipeline. By then, we aim to serve over 400,000 people through 40 plus projects, all of which would be generating carbon credits. And so the estimated value of the portfolio, just based on market prices by the end of 2026, we're estimating to be around 2 million USD. Right, so our Tanzania carbon finance pilot launched in 2021, leading to certification and our first credit issuance by early 2025. But lessons from that pilot definitely streamlined our efforts as we rolled out in Kenya and Malawi, where we anticipate a faster 2-year timeline from launch to issuance. And while 2 to 3 years is generally considered more typical, the process, just in our experience and talking to other project developers, can really take 4 to 5 years, just depending on an organization's ability to cover startup cost, build robust data systems, and ensure that they're able to meet all of the required compliance activities. A little about our leverage project type. So each water mission project is designed to meet local needs, but they all incorporate solar powered pumping, chlorination treatment, and gravity-fed distribution to deliver safe, reliable water system throughout communities. So whether that's household connections, tap stands, but also institutions, households, and hospitals. But providing safe water is only part of the solution if you're trying to generate climate finance. But if you're trying to generate climate finance projects also need to reduce the environmental impact of traditional water treatment. And so that's the key. So in many areas in this region in East Africa, households boil water using fuel wood, which releases greenhouse gases and drives deforestation. And so by replacing this practice with a solar powered water system, for example, we can cut emissions, preserve forests, and improve community health benefits. So climate finance is more than just system functionality. It requires verified impact backed by quantifiable data that shows how projects actually improve the lives of those that we're serving and how those impacts align with global sustainability goals. And so to qualify for climate finance, WASH interventions have to clearly demonstrate measurable climate contributions and in many cases just highlight their additional co-benefits. Right, and so robust data links project outcomes such as reduced emissions, improved water access, and health benefits to globally recognized impact metrics like the UN Sustainable Development Goals are really the best known. So in Water Mission's case, we track our contributions against SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, in addition to SDG 13, climate action, which is the required one. So these indicators provide a clear alignment between our project activities and sustainability objectives. And in some cases, our projects were already collecting some of this program data. And so it made sense to go with those specific SDGs or indicators. So structured data and continuous monitoring are crucial for generating verified insights that track emissions reductions and these broader impacts for climate finance. And they really start, at the beginning stage, so really at pre-planning, and then those activities and data collection activities persist throughout the life of the project. And so I just want to briefly outline some of the essential data activities. So both those that are required by established methodologies and some of the optional approaches that we employed that really strengthen carbon credit reporting and enhance your credibility with those crediting agencies and with funders. Right, so projects really start with robust baseline data. So it's essential for securing climate finance as it provides the foundation for credible emissions and these impact calculations. And so before launching a project, key pre-intervention assessments might include things like water usage, so existing access methods and treatment practices for generating greenhouse gas emissions, fuel-based treatment, reliance on firewood or charcoal for boiling unsafe water, which can contribute to these emissions and to deforestation. And then things like the social impact of water scarcity, so effects on health, time burden, and economic productivity. And so this baseline data, like I said, should align with these key indicators, the ones that you select, and that way you can track measurable impacts against them during your annual survey. And so annual impacts that you might track could be SDG 5, such as gender equality, time saved by women and girls from reduced water and fuel collection, SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, so access to improved safe water access for more beneficiaries. SDG 3, good health and well-being, so lower rates of waterborne diseases and hospitalizations. Some of these will be very familiar to us since we're, WASH sector professionals. And SDG 13, of course, climate action, so reduced fuel use for water treatment via solar-powered systems. So this slide just highlights key question categories from Water Mission's baseline survey, which we designed to measure these impacts effectively. And if anyone's interested, I'm happy to share more details offline about our tools or processes or survey methods. Right, so once a safe water system is in place, ongoing monitoring is going to ensure performance. It helps to verify your climate impacts, and it supports sustainability through your annual surveys and routine audits, which are required before you get credits. And so while emission reductions are the primary focus, credit calculations require more than just production volume, because the true impact comes from what they're trying to measure is sustained community adoption. So it has to be evidenced through your project documentation, your project data, that households consistently use your safe water solution instead of reverting to traditional methods of boiling unsafe water. And without this demonstrated buy-in, the environmental and health benefits just remain limited. And so for valid crediting, projects often need to track things like asset management, so the inventory, functionality, and maintenance of your systems, volumetric production, so water supply capacity versus actual consumption, uptime tracking, operational days and downtime, water quality, so compliance with national standards for safe drinking water at the household level, that's a key one. Energy efficiency, reduced reliance on fuel-based purification, and then the big one, community adoption, whether households are actively using project water instead of unsafe methods for treating their water. And just a note here that beyond compliance, rigorous monitoring, this type of rigorous monitoring of the project and of collecting data, it just enhances project outcomes in general and service levels by improving water system performance. It supports community health, and it just generates really valuable data for future project improvements. And so in our experience, even if crediting or climate finance aren't ultimately achieved, the monitoring process itself coupled with broader impact tracking can just still make the endeavor such a success. And so these efforts just ensure meaningful long-term benefits regardless of financial return. So I guess just all that to say the journey can be very worthwhile in its own right. Right. So the co-benefits that I mentioned, they're just really, beyond emissions tracking. They include things like health benefits, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. But these additional impacts, not they don't only benefit communities, but they can potentially increase the market value of carbon credits and strengthen funding applications just by demonstrating this more holistic um, holistic development. And so, at least in our experience, we had to track 2 additional co-benefits in addition to SDG 13, and you can see some of the ones that we selected there, along with the tools that we used to gather the data for those selected indicators. And so same with the baseline, would be happy to share tools, survey methods, processes with anyone who's interested later. We had to change internally. We had to staff up in order to meet um, the requirements for climate financing. We had to make improvements on how we collect, analyze, and report data by investing in better tools, systems, and certainly personnel. You can see some of our newly hired MEL staff there in the top corner. But yeah, some of our efforts included strengthening data quality through expanded monitoring teams, rigorous training of staff and enumerators. Mobile data collection certainly streamlined our efforts, and we certainly focused on some enhanced quality control and assurance processes just to offer us more time for collecting and discerning some of the actionable data coming out of this program. We've additionally invested in remote monitoring and program management tools to further optimize our operations, which really have just all helped us secure the potential for this type of funding and really has helped us sustain long-term safe water access in our programs. Key takeaways, some I've mentioned in this presentation, some I didn't have time for. Again, happy to talk about them more offline. But first things first, your baseline data is so important as it secures climate finance by ensuring compliance and funding eligibility through accurate pre-project assessments. You have to get your baseline right, or you can waste a lot of time later trying to fix it, or you could potentially jeopardize your future credit claims by, by not getting it right and getting your impact tracking wrong. So monitoring and compliance build credibility with routine tracking and reporting to support credit issuance. And there's just so much project data that is verified during audits, and so it's really important to get it right, get it really keyed in, make sure there's no gaps in your performance data. Co-benefits we talked about, they can strengthen the funding potential of your portfolio. Investing in systems and people just can't be underestimated. It really just takes a village to make this happen, both your MEL staff and just the broader staff that are needed to ensure you have the data and the performance levels to meet these crediting requirements. Just a note that the system for generating credits in our experience is really optimized for new projects. And so if you're considering generating credits on past projects, it can really be a burdensome, a burden on your time. The process isn't really optimized for that. Local partnerships drive adoption by fostering just community engagement, project adoption, and can really support government compliance applications for the various approvals that you'll need to generate and to sell on the global market. And just a note here that diversified revenue streams can reduce your risk by combining carbon finance with other funding sources to enhance financial stability. So the pitfalls are just the opposite of everything I mentioned. I will leave them there for you to review at your leisure. And I know I'm out of time, so I will hand it back to our RWSN colleagues. And again, just such a privilege to be here, and I am more than available. My email's there to have any further discussions and share any more on our learnings and pitfalls to avoid. So thanks again, and I will hand it back. Yes, great.
Thank you very much, Amy, for your presentation. A lot of meat in that presentation. I think for me, the thing that struck me was going beyond system functionality. As WASH professionals, we are fixated on functionality, which is important. But when it comes to climate financing, you need to look a bit more beyond just consumption and moving to beyond production and move to consumption data. So that's a really interesting lesson there. I think something we can dig into as we go further into the presentations. Next, of course, we have our next presenter, who is Marlene Ophorst from Nazava Water Filters. Marlene is an expert she's an expert at water and climate at Nazava Water Filters in Kenya. She has a background in water treatment from Delft University of Technology and experience tackling water projects in the Netherlands. With Nazava, she focuses on certifying the Nazava water filter, which she'll talk about today in terms of what it is and how it works, and also using that for carbon credits and a deep dive into research and development to tackle the fluoride problem in Kenya. So from Amy on the east coast of the US, we are now with Marlene, who is in Nairobi. Over to you, Marlene.
Yes, thank you, Muti, and thank you, Amy, for your presentation. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So today, since Amy's presentation was mostly focused on which data to collect, I will guide you today through the process Nazava Water Filter is following to get carbon certification for our project in Kenya. And currently, we are in the final phase of our carbon certification, which is very excited. But before we start, let's first have a look shortly at the problem. So we can go to the next slide. Yes. So in Kenya, around 15 million rural people lack access to safe water in their house. And as you can see in the graph on the lower right, you can see that almost every drinking water source which they have available is positive for E. coli, meaning that there is no safe drinking water for the households in their home. Next slide. Next. Yes. So to address this challenge, Nazava, a social enterprise focused on improving access to safe drinking water, was founded with its mission to provide safe and affordable drinking water to the 4.4 billion people globally that do not have access to treated water. And in the gold standard, we focus on the similar SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, Water Mission is focusing on, which you can see in the bottom of the slide. So next slide. Nazava offers a simple household water filter solution that allows people to purify their own water at the point of use without the need for boiling or using electricity. And our water filter uses three-step approach. You have the ceramic membrane, which is impregnated with nano silver and filled with activated carbon, which you can see on the right of the slide. And this makes sure that we remove the bacteria and improve the color, taste, and the smell. Next slide. So our water filter has been tested in over 35 laboratories worldwide, including by the World Health Organization, the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and the Ministry of Health in Kenya. And these certifications are very important to have, as you need them for the carbon credit certification process to prove that our water filter effectively removes E. coli, and then only then we can qualify for emission reductions. Next slide. So with the Nazava water filter, households no longer need to buy bottled water or boil their water, saving them money, time, and reducing carbon emissions. Next slide. Yes. Our target customer profile is mostly rural women who are members of microfinance institutes. They use ground or river water for drinking, and currently they typically boil water using firewood or charcoal. And they also live on less than $100 per month. And that's why Nazafa also started exploring carbon credits. So we can go to the next slide. So since Nazafa replaces the need to boil water, we reduce the reliance on firewood and charcoal. And this means that households have a reduction in their carbon emissions. And this also creates for Nazafa an opportunity to put a value on our climate impact through the carbon certification. So the carbon certification allows us to generate a secondary revenue stream by turning the avoided emissions into carbon credits. And these carbon credits we can then sell. And these revenues, which we earn from the carbon credits, we are able to put them in our filters again, so we can sell our filters at a subsidized cost, making them more accessible for our target group in the rural communities. Next slide. So currently, Nazafa has 2 carbon credit projects. So Nazafa was founded in Indonesia more than 10 years ago. And that's also where they started the first carbon credit project in 2014. And this certification project in Indonesia was fully outsourced to an external partner who managed the certification and monitored the process. And as you can see, our Indonesia project generates over 22,000 tons CO2 emissions annually. So for our Kenya project, Nazafa decided that they now want to manage it internally. And that's also why I came working at the company in October 2023 to also help them with the certification process. And we are now in the final stages of our certification process with the gold standard. And our project in Kenya has an estimated credits of over 45,000 tons CO2 emissions reduced yearly. And since 2008, Nazafa has a total carbon value of over $500,000 with an average price of $12 per credit. So as you can see, we started our carbon credit in Kenya in October 2023, and we are almost 2 years later now, 2 years down the road, and we are in the final stages of the certification process. So you can see it's quite a long process, quite an intensive process, but it's a very rewarding journey to be on. Next slide. So this shows a bit our step-by-step approach for our gold standard certification. So when we started in October 2023, you have to check the eligibility and choose the right methodology for your project. So we applied for the methodology for emission reduction from safe drinking water supply. Once you have chosen the methodology, you start with the baseline survey, which is taking quite a long time. I will dive a bit more into that later. Then also, when you're busy with the carbon credit project, you also organize stakeholder consultation meetings to engage with local partners and receive community feedback. Once you have done your baseline survey and your stakeholder consultation meeting, you can prepare your project design document, and which includes all the technical and social details of the project. So once the project design document is finished, we submitted it to Gold Standard for listing, and then you will hire an independent third-party validation who's reviewing and validating your project and your baseline survey. So that's what we have done, and then you send it back to Gold Standard with the feedback you have received from the third-party verifier, which you have also implemented in your project. And then Gold Standard has its own final review with which feedback, which you also need to implement in your project. And then once you get through this step, your project is finally at the design certification stage. And after the design certification stage, it's time to implement the project and set up monitoring systems to track its actual impact over time. And that's where we are now. So next slide. So as I said in the previous slide, as part of the certification process, you have to conduct stakeholder consultation meetings. And we have conducted 3 stakeholder consultation meetings to cover a wide range of our target population, 1 in Nairobi and 2 in the rural villages. And in your stakeholder consultation meeting, you invite those people who do not use your product yet. You have to invite them. So to invite them, we have sent official invitation letters to the ministries. We published announcement in the newspapers and we shared it in our newsletter. And that's how we gathered for the Nairobi meeting 30 people. Then for the village meetings, it's a bit more complicated to invite people, but what we did is we approached the local chief of the community and he helped us bring the right people together. And during these meetings, we explained both the Nazava water filter and the carbon credit project. And then the stakeholders were invited to give feedback, which we have to implement in the project design. And all the stakeholders were very enthusiastic. And even after the meeting, they came to us to ask us how they can get a filter. Next slide. So to get certified, we are required to collect a wide range of data, both at the baseline stage and during the monitoring. So at the baseline, we collect data on household information, baseline water sources, water treatment they use, and also on the sustainable development goals. And here we interview people who are also not using the product. And it's important to have a strong baseline to measure the real change over time and to be able to prove your climate and social impact. Then later, through your annual monitoring survey, you collect the same type of information so you can compare it with the baseline and see what has changed. You also measure the actual usage of the filter and take water quality samples to confirm the impact on the water safety. With this data, you can then calculate the carbon emissions reduced and the impacts on the other sustainable development goals. Next slide. Yes, so to collect the data, since we are quite a small company and we had to hire people to do the collection of the data for us. So what we did is we worked with students and recent graduates, and we trained them on how to collect the data, but also why to collect the data, because that's also very important for them to know. Then during the surveys, they used the app called AP Collect, which you can see in the left bottom here. And AP Collect has the advantage that it works without internet, and therefore you can easily use it in remote settings. And another advantage of AP Collect is that we could review the surveys and call the surveyors if anything was unclear and change it as well. So this helps us to maintain the quality of the data. So if you would like to know more about the AP Collect, the founder of Nazava has made a video to show how it works, which is also in the slide here. Then for the monitoring phase, it was a bit more difficult to train the people online since they have to do water quality testing, which you can see in the image on the right side. So what we did is we personally trained the surveyors on how to do the water quality testing and the surveys. So I also went into the field with them. And currently we have our surveyors in the field doing our monitoring survey, which is not going always very smoothly because sometimes a household confirms an appointment and then change their mind the next day. So it's important to plan for extra time when collecting data because it always takes longer than you think. Next slide. So once all the data is collected and verified by the third-party validator, it can be used into global impact reporting frameworks. And at Nazava, we are following an impact matrix to track and communicate our results, which you can see here. So our global impact up until 2024 is that we have reached 600,000 people with improved health. We say our customers save 20 million dollars through access to drinking water at lower cost. Up until now, we have reduced over 250,000 tons of CO2 on carbon emissions, and our customers save 139 hours per filter per year. That's 3 weeks per year, and what would you do with 3 weeks? It's quite a lot. Next slide. So for 2030, we have our impact to reach 5.5 million people with improved health, have customer savings of $42 million, and have over 500,000 tons CO2 emissions reduced by replacing the need to boil water. So to wrap up, getting carbon certification is an intense and long but rewarding journey. And at Nazava, we believe that everyone deserves access to safe drinking water. And by linking social impact to climate finance, we are getting one step closer to that goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marlene, for your presentation. And for those who are just joining us, we started with water missions with their systems, which are gravity-fed, solar-powered with chlorination, and we've gone to a water filter. So these are two different ways that organizations are leveraging, generating WASH data to actually leverage or unlock climate financing. And for those of you who are wondering, Marlene is a social entrepreneur, and right behind her, the water filter is right there. So she is a proud promoter of her own product. So those of you who are wondering, what is she talking about? It's right there at the back. Thank you very much. Thank you, Marlene. And our next and final presenter, Bapon, is coming from the Green Climate Fund. He is a passionate and committed water and climate leader with over 22 years of global experience in designing and implementing projects that address climate change risks and enhance resilience. He is currently providing leadership and oversight of the portfolio of investments in water resources for addressing climate change at the Green Climate Fund, the world's largest dedicated fund for climate action. So on that note, over to you, Dr. Papon, and your presentation.
Thank you so much for inviting. I think it's quite enthusiastic to see some other presenter and their area of expertise. And thanks for also the organizer to bringing all these things together. So I'm gonna a little bit share with you today about how the Green Climate Fund works, especially what are the little bit guidelines for water security and sanitation solution to accessing climate financing. And I think I lead the water sector, and that's always a passion for me to work in this particular sector. So maybe just go to the next slide, please. I don't know how many of you know about the GCF. So we are a mandate of implementing the Paris Agreement. And we are one of the largest climate financing in the world. The uniqueness for us is actually we work through the country. So we are a country-driven organization where a country can access our readiness fund, country can access our programming support, country can access our project preparation fund. So there are different modalities we provide to enhancing the capacity of the country to accessing the financing. Secondly, we are an open partnership organization. So we work through our partners. So we are a second due diligence organization, basically a funder who provide financing to our partner to implementing climate action program. One of the uniqueness for us is actually we provide a differential financial instrument, which you may not have with any other DFIs or multi multilateral development bank, because our concessionality could be need and purpose-based financing, so fit for financing, what we call. And we can provide you any sort of instrument such as guarantor, equity, highly concessional loans, grant, whatever actually needed by the countries. On the other side, we have a high risk taking or high risk appetite, so that actually that could create a market opportunity for local entrepreneur as well as SMSE, MSME, and others. And also we are quite unique in a sense of we provide a 50-50 balance of the mitigation and adaptation, and water and wash actually one of the core part where it can be actually designed for mitigation project. It could be designed for an adaptation project. Next slide, please. So now overall, we mobilized $16.6 billion in the market. Together with the partner, it's actually a $62.7 billion right now actually in the market for climate financing. Next slide, please. And you can see actually there are differential instruments that we used so far, even though grant and loan is maybe the major, but the guarantor equity and others, we use many of those private sector engagement or private sector facilities to create a market, unlocking the market for wash related activities or any other portfolio activities. Next slide, please. We have also a vision to bringing a 50 by 30 mission vision. What it means we like to mobilize a total $50 billion in the market. And to covering that, we try to focus to our most vulnerable communities, conflict communities. We are trying to ensuring that how we can actually mobilize the private sector in the market. Currently in the wash area, there is only 2% investment from private sector. And the demand that we have per country, only one financer or donor will not be able to actually solve those problems. So we need to ensure actually that we can do a crowdsourcing of the financing so that we can actually unlock the potentiality. We're also providing a country programming so that actually we try to make it more partnership with models, more accreditation in the national bank and national entity so that actually the money could directly go to the country. We are trying to also expediting the project review and as well as approval process so that fast track the project could go to the country and the country could access the financing faster than the required time. And also how we can actually create a better impact because a climate finance need to create a climate impact. So that's maybe one of our vision here for 2030. Next slide, please. This is just a modality that how we trying to make sure that within 9 months, we are able to actually package a project so that actually the country can actually access the financing quite faster. Next slide, please. So now coming back to the water sector or water security for climate resilience, as a GCF, we are trying to looking at some of those domains that country can actually access financing. It could be mix, it could be nexus, it could be one-off based on the problem statement. So we want country to design projects related to water conservation, water efficiency, and water reuse, such as wastewater treatment plan, how you do the wastewater reuse of water. Secondly, we are trying to look at more on the hydrological observation, risk-based decision making, as well as risk assessment, early warning system. Third, more looking at more on the integrated water resource management or how to actually achieve the SDG 6. Then we are trying to support lots of farm project on the ecosystem or nature-based solution for catchment management or payment for ecosystem kind of programming. And then fifth is more on the climate resilience wash. So how actually we create a more sanitation programming, looking at more climate angle. And knowledge management is more actually cross-cutting. The major purpose is actually to how actually create a flexible and dedicated need-based project for countries using Nexus and integrated approach, but also how can actually bring blended grant and innovative financing instrument like water bond, cat bond, guarantor, debt swap together for creating a better market opportunity. Next slide, please. And when we talk about the water and as well as climate change, it's just a multidimensional aspect because there is nothing is single in our planet. So our atmosphere, our ocean, our rivers, our coastal, everything is interconnected, interlinkage. So when you're actually designing those projects, you always need to look at the relationship, interlinkage, direct and indirect, cascading and compounding impact of every aspect so that actually you understand the overall inclusiveness of the programming. And in that sense, you also always need to do some co-production and co-design so that you actually engage the right community, right people for the designing the programming. And GCF always actually wants that kind of aspect for the country to design such kind of programming. Next slide, please. And once we looking at the early warning systems, especially for the flood and drought, we also like to see actually how a more risk-based decision could be actually designed more dynamic scale so that when you do a climate risk assessment, it's not only one-off based on your weather, climate, hydrology, ocean, you embedded every forecasting into one single platform, and then you try to understand your physical risk as well as transitional risk, which could ultimately to help you to understand the loss modeling or probable maximum loss. And once you understand your probable maximum loss, you can define together with your stakeholders that what are the adaptation benefit or to create a greater impact into the climate change. Yeah, so if any country like to design a water project, a fundamental requirement is actually to understand the climate risk. And the climate risk should be a function of climate hazard, vulnerabilities, as well as exposure. So when you're looking at the climate change aspect, a sort of like a 30 millimeter rainfall in a 22 hours time, or a temperature increase over the next 20 years, you need to understand actually what kind of hazard that climate diseases are actually creating over the period of time. And once you understand those hazards, it could be flood, it could be drought, it could be heat wave, or it could be storm. Then you try to look at actually where those are exposed and what are the vulnerabilities that we want to address. And then once you understand your climate risk, you can actually then define your barrier, that what are the barrier actually is creating. And once you know your barrier, you can actually then define the adaptation option or adaptation practice mitigation option. And then that could actually then fit into an outcomes scenario, what we call normally a theory of change. And that's actually one of the core part of the GCF programming to understand your theory of change to designing any project. Next slide, please. And while we try to design the programming, GCF believes on 6 fundamental pathways. So pathways is actually, you need to consider that water is an asset class. So it's not just free goods, so that the behavioral change actually start from the individual level, so that we actually value the water use and we think that this is a precious asset. Secondly, you need to look at actually how we can actually bring those innovative and fit for purpose financing. And that's quite important here. If you look at in your own country, it's not like that you never had a project on flood management or drought management. But because of the project nature, once a project ends, after 3 years or 5 years, everything ends at that project. There is no such kind of continuity. So we need to actually change that kind of modality, that how we can actually create a financial sustainability into our programming. And bringing those innovative and fit for purpose financing could actually create that kind of market opportunity. Thirdly, looking at the transboundary aspect, because water doesn't have any boundary and it works through the catchment as well as watershed. So while actually upstream or downstream country, they blame each other, how can actually we bring them together and ensure that actually they are contributing in the same manner? And that is quite important for us as well. And then fourth is more looking at the governance systems. If you look at the WASH culture of any of your country, you'll see the major weakness for us is actually the governance systems. Either we are not actually coordinating horizontally, or neither actually we are vertically. So how can actually we bring those kind of agile as well as adaptive governance mechanism into practice, linking to climate change, sustainable development, as well as other areas. And fifth is more on the dynamic policy innovative engine. You can always bring the innovation, or you can use the traditional practices. But while you actually wants to bring a new innovative solution, if your policy doesn't support the innovation, it's just in pilots. And pilot doesn't help for creating a greater impact. So we also always need to make sure that actually if we like to bring the innovation into the practice, into the market, or in our scaling up, that innovation need to support it through the policy framework. And then lastly, how we can actually create a circular water economy, because every single people who actually use the water, they pay. And then if there is a payment kind of culture, why not actually create a circular economy using reuse as well as other methodology to create that kind of opportunity. So these are the 6 fundamentals we always try to look at in the GCF modality. The next slide, please. And in the presentation, I try to also explain that how you normally do those kind of transforming water management or establishing a, say, water and asset class. So creating a policy framework, creating a financing or de-risking instrument. We also bring the innovative models to creating water as an asset class. Secondly, when you try to look at on the fit for purpose financing, next slide, please. You can actually look at that how we actually try to create those kind of private sector engagement using an enabling environment, bringing the risk appetite, creating those instruments, and how to attract the market. So that means actually de-risking the mechanism, capital mobilization, bankable project, and financial models create a more financing solution into the market. Next one. For transboundary, you also need to look at actually how you're looking at the cross-disciplinary activities, as well as stakeholder engagement, knowledge sharing, as well as knowledge bank, because that's how you can actually transfer the knowledge, and joint infrastructure development so that everyone can be co-benefited. Next slide, please. You can go to the next one as well. Yeah, and then similarly for the policy and innovative engines, so you can actually always need to look sure that actually how this collaborative policy making actually are embedded into the system. And COVID may be a good example for us here to look at that how dynamic our policy environment are. Next slide, please. Now I think finally, maybe next slide. Finally, if you want to design a water project, you have to always look at the 6 fundamental criteria or metrics, which is impact potential, obviously, paradigm shift. We discussed a little bit. You need to ensure the sustainable development. It needs to be recipient needs. So we don't actually want a top-down approach. It needs to be bottom-up. And it needs to promote the country ownership. And finally, it needs to have a efficiency and effectiveness in terms of whatever dollar you invest, what are the benefit it brings. Yeah. Next slide, please. You can always look at the GCF guidelines. Those are next one, please. Are in the website. So feel free to look at those things to design your water project. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bapon. Thank you for that very informative presentation. A lot of content, a lot of information. But please, I've seen in the chat people asking, will we get a recording? Will we get the slides? The recording will be available. The team from RWSN are sharing links in the chat, so you can go and check out where the presentations are. But also this recording will be available so that you can go back to it to learn a bit more. If I could invite Amy and Marlene to join for the Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, I had questions ready for these people, but you've asked better questions than me. So I'm going to go to your questions from the chat for our presenters here. There were quite a number of questions. I think I want to first of all start with Amy. I know that the speakers have been responding in the Q&A box, but I will ask them to respond to some of those questions publicly for the sake of everyone. So my first question is actually to Amy from Water Missions. There's a question here from Sanitap, and I think it is really linked to what you're talking about the co-benefits, that it is more than just looking at functionality or production. You also need to look at consumption. And so the question, it's a very long question, so I'll just get straight to the bottom, is how does Water Missions monitor health benefits? So I think this is kind of linked to the co-benefits you're talking about, which came up in Marlene's presentation, and also Bapon touched on the same. So Water Missions, how do you monitor health benefits?
Great, thanks, Muti. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And yeah,
Loud and clear.
it was great. It was a delight to hear about Sanitap's progress with the hand pumps. So our health benefits are really measured in two ways. So we do a lot of water quality testing, and there was a question from Sanitap about maybe challenges with lab certification testing, which we also had. So according to our methodology, you had to use nationally certified laboratories for your water quality testing, and many of us are WASH professionals, and we can do our own testing as well. And so aligning our own standards of water quality testing with national water quality testing was a bit of a challenge. We ended up using portable tools and kits, which really helped us overcome this challenge of getting our samples to the nationally certified labs. So we were able to test them right in the communities to make sure that we were meeting national water quality testing standards. And as far as health benefits for certain SDGs like co-benefits, those were really self-reported. And so we built our baseline in our annual surveys around questions about clinic visits and waterborne diseases, and those are really self-reported answers. And those are really the two main ways that we measure it.
And maybe just for self-reported, did you need to verify them later on? Like, for example, for hospital visits, did you need to verify that people actually went to the hospital?
We didn't have to go to the hospital specifically for verification records. You just submit your baseline and your end-line surveys for review to the VVB or the auditor during the verification process, in our experience.
Oh, okay. Now, thank you very much for that response. And there's actually another question I'll come back to you on a little later, Amy, but I want to come to Marlene. Marlene, there's a financial question for you. I think you did talk about what you're projecting to make from your carbon credits. I think you said 500K US. So there's a question here regarding the financial piece, which is, when do you expect your break-even point covering all expenses related to get carbon credits certified? When do you expect to break even? That the money you're getting from carbon credits covers your expenses that you're spending on generating all this data?
Yes, so the break even kind of depends on also how many water filters we sell and how many carbon credits we can generate. So in Indonesia, our break even happened in the third year, so after 3 years of our project. And in Kenya, we are expecting to break even in 2027. So that's in 2 years. But it's an expectation because it really depends on how many water filters we sell, yes.
Okay, fine. So everything depends on how many units of your filters you sell to actually cover that cost.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
Fine. This next question I'm going to throw to the two of you, then I'm going to go to Bapon. And this is really the one thing that came out very clearly in both your presentations, is how much time it takes to generate this data, to get an auditor to come and verify your data, and so on. So it's very clear. I think, Amy, I think in the beginning you said in the first country where you were trying it took about 4 years. You're hoping that in, is it Kenya or Tanzania and Malawi, it might take about 2. And I think, Marlene, you said the same thing. It took about 2 years. So there's a general question to both of you. What sources did you tap into to cover the budget required for the certification process? So where did you get the money to do this? I'll start with Marlene, then we go to Amy.
Okay, yes. So, yes, we have different sources where it's coming from. So in Kenya, currently we have an impact investor who is supporting us in getting our carbon credit project certified. And then for Indonesia, it's a bit more different since we work there with an external party. We worked with Nexus for Development, which I've also shared the link in the question as well. They are very good with water-related carbon certification. So Nexus for Development, they pre-finance all our costs and then they transferred the revenue to us after we sold our water filters and the deduction of their cost. So that's how we did it in Indonesia since we worked with an external party there.
Oh, so you had an external party there that pre-financed some of the work. Okay.
Yes, in Indonesia, yes.
In Indonesia. Okay. So basically it might change depending on the context where you're doing the work. Okay.
Yeah.
So Amy, over to you. The same question. What sources did you tap into to actually cover the cost of certification?
Yeah, it's similar to Marlene. We also had something similar to an impact investor. So we had access to a repayable loan from an interested party, but we also had, which was interesting, we have corporate partners who partner with us regularly for our work and who have historically funded us from their philanthropic branch, but who came to us with this interest in potentially investing in Water Mission's carbon credit program to help meet their own sustainability goals. And so this was where a lot of our seed funding came for the pilot in Tanzania that we launched over the past 4 years. And so I would just encourage project developers to maybe take a look at who their corporate partners are and if there's any appetite for this kind of activity for seed funding.
Okay, so you also sort of worked with the existing network of support that you had,
Yeah.
and there was appetite to support you in going down this avenue. Maybe just if I could just maybe dig into that a little bit. Where did the appetite come from? Did your funder want you to get money elsewhere besides them? Where did that appetite come from for your funder?
Yeah, from what I understand, it was a little bit entrepreneurial. So in our case, with our corporate partners, it was mostly driven by their desire to meet certain corporate sustainability goals. For our repayable loan, it was more interest in seeing if the market would flourish, and and interest on the loan. So I'm sure there's a little bit of a venture capitalist mindset for some of our investors, but mostly it's driven by corporate sustainability goals.
Okay, kind of like I think it's called ESG, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Yeah, basically making that sort of showing that they're giving back to society in that way. Thank you for that. Bapon, I'll come to you. There was a question that came earlier when you and I were having the conversation about the poll, and I think this is a really interesting question. I'll read the entire question. Is from Nadine. When talking about having innovative solutions versus business as usual, don't you think that given climate emergency some countries are facing, this is not the role of the climate fund to support solutions that proved efficiency, even if not innovative? Sometimes traditional methods are more sustainable and low cost than expensive innovative solutions hard to put in place and operate and manage. So I think the general question is they feel that some traditional methods are more ideal and sustainable than expensive innovative ones. What's your take on that particular comment to the chat you and I had at the beginning?
No, I fully agree on that perspective. One of the things we need to understand, obviously we are a country driven, and when we're actually looking at solution, it needs to be need-based solution. And sometimes the need is actually very common traditional practices. And many of our projects still we support many of those traditional activities, which may be the best fit on the context, low cost, as we just mentioned, as well as sustainable. So that one of the things you need to bring here, the sustainability, what we are actually looking for from the Green Climate Fund point of view, as well as scalability. So that is our
Yeah.
paradigm shift here. And we are not talking about that, oh, you used to do, for an example, deep tube well, and then now you need to do different things. If you think that is the best solution for you, do that one, but you need to prove us that it's not just a one-off that need to be supported rest of your life. So where you bring those sustainability using those traditional method, low cost, low tech, and often low tech, low cost is actually much better than high tech and more expensive product. But looking at the sustainability point of view, if you can prove that actually that is a sustainable solution and that is scalable, not one of support, it can obviously can fit for purpose.
Yeah. So it's not that the GCF doesn't want traditional solutions. Those traditional solutions still have to meet the criteria of scalable and sustainable and something that will keep going even without the organization there. Fine. So sustainability and scalability still a requirement. And maybe still on Bapon, I wanted to sort of pick your brain on a question that's always interested me, because I've tried to get climate financing and I realized I had a lot of assumptions. What are some of the assumptions you've noticed from WASH NGOs when they're coming to GCF to secure or unlock climate financing? What are some of the missteps or the wrong assumptions that you have come across, particularly when it comes to WASH data, unlocking climate financing? From your experience, what are some of the ones that you've noticed?
I think that's the interesting question you raise, actually. So when you're talking about the climate financing, you need to come up with a climate storytelling, a story which has a thread. And that I'm coming back to again, actually, the talk that I made actually on the theory of change.
Yeah.
So when you sit with the community, we have so many problems, and you cannot actually separate item by item. This is not climate change. This is the development. This is another things, because everything has a connection and an interconnectedness. But when you're trying to access the financing from the climate finance perspectives, you need to tell your story as a climate action. How you creating a climate action? So that means the story need to be linked with your climate indices, climate risk, climate adaptation, and what are the barrier and how you want to address those things. And then you can bring those peripheral other assumptions that you are talking about that needed to. But you need to forefront talk about the climate action as well as climate change impact. And often actually we don't able to articulate that language quite properly. And that's maybe the creates producing a high quality concept note or proposal that could actually satisfy to accessing the climate finance.
Okay. So again, I love the word you used. You said telling a story, because a theory of change is essentially a story. How is you doing this going to lead to that? So telling that story, which is also its own form of data, trying to connect those dots in a way that tells a coherent story to climate action. So it's not just WASH in and of itself, but it connects to climate action. And this is something I think I've noticed across all your presentations, that especially when it comes to co-benefits, I think Amy used the word holistic, that it has to, and I think even Bapon, you touched on the same, that you have to show how you're not just ticking other boxes, but you're tracking how, I think the word you used was everything is interconnected. So again, it's really looking at all of that. And Marlene as well, from your presentation, trying to show the connection of that to health and other core benefits. I know we're running out of time, but I have one question I want to ask that is, I think I will direct it to all of you, and it's really about capacity building. Someone is asking in the chat, what capacity building programs exist for WASH professionals, WASH data professionals, to better understand the mechanism of climate financing and carbon credits? So that is the question. Are there any capacity building opportunities or programs for WASH professionals or WASH data professionals to actually understand these mechanisms of climate financing? I think I will start with Amy, and then we move to Marlene. Amy, particularly with your organization, you showed us a picture of your team, the MEL team. What capacity programs did they go through to position them for this kind of work?
Yeah, in Water Mission's case, and I can't speak to the broader landscape, we're definitely still learning, and so I don't want to miss if there's other opportunities out there. But in our case, we really had to bring in the external knowledge into our organization, and so we've worked with consultants specifically, and so we've networked with various partners just to find good consultants to educate our team, to hold, various trainings, to walk us through the methodologies, to walk us through calculations. And then we've worked really hard to develop those trainings and that knowledge within the organization. And so consultants are one option. We also partner with the Global Water Center, which is a sister organization to Water Mission, who specifically has a carbon branch to help resource and educate project developers in the WASH sector on climate finance.
Thank you. So we're running out of time. So Marlene, very quickly, what are some of the capacity building opportunities you tapped into to help your team for this kind of work?
Yes, so when I just started at Nazava and started with the carbon credit project, I did the training materials from Gold Standard. So Gold Standard also has training materials on how to start a carbon credit project. And then in Kenya, they also have launched CAMAC, which is a carbon association here in Kenya, where all companies in Kenya who are contributing to the carbon market are a member of. So there you can also ask a lot of questions as well.
Thank you. So we have a couple of others, and I can see in the chat some people are also posting. Bapon, from the Green Climate Fund perspective, what are some of the capacity building opportunities for organizations that want to get into the space, but they don't know where to start?
I mean, first of all, we are not an advocacy organization. That's one of the challenge for us. Okay. But then we try to provide some of those guidelines that we presented, the sector guide as well as project preparation guidelines, and that actually step-by-step process that would help countries. But also there are a lot of other organizations like advocacy agencies, such as, we have the Water Aid here, we have a Global Water Partnership, we have a Global Water Intelligence, World Bank, other MDBs. They actually provide lots of data-driven technology solution for WASH area. And I think that could be actually quite invaluable for partners who are actually like to bring their knowledge in this space.
Thank you very much. And plugging other organizations, Water Aid, Global Water Intelligence, Global Water Partnerships, who also provide capacity building support in this particular area of WASH data for unlocking climate financing. We are almost 4 minutes to the end of the session. I just very quickly, 30 seconds, each of you, what is the one major takeaway you would want people to take from this session? 30 seconds or less. I'll start with Bapon, moving to Marlene. Bapon, what is the one takeaway you want people to take away from this session or your presentation?
Well, I mean, first of all, I like to link with the theme of the session, which is actually, if a data cannot actually tell the story, there's no value of those data. And a data, when it's able to tell the story, it could actually create a greater impact. And in the finance point of view, we would also like to see a blended financing into the WASH to create a sustainable solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. If your data is not telling the story, it's not the right data. Excellent takeaway. Marlene, what is the one takeaway you want people to take away from your presentation or your experience as Nazava?
Yes, so I've already mentioned it a couple of times also in my presentation, is plan enough time for your carbon certification process and your data collection, because it's a long process, but it's a rewarding one. So also celebrate the small achievements throughout the process.
Plan, 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 and celebrate your achievements. Wonderful takeaway. Amy, what is the one takeaway you want people to take from your experience at Water Missions and this work?
Yeah, so I'm going to advocate for the project teams who are out there getting all of the data and helping with the performance metrics, but investing in the staff and the technical resources to really get this data and to meet the performance criteria just can't be understated. And then investing in the training of those staff to help them tell that story and to help them, understand that this is more about compliance. This is about excellence and impacting lives.
Thank you. Investing in staff and investing in systems for them to actually get the data they need. Thank you very much. This is the end of our session today. I promised 90 minutes. We have 1 minute to go. But before you leave, I would just want to say thank you, Bapon, Amy, and Marlene for such wonderful presentations. And thank you for your amazing questions. You made my job here very useless. I had questions, but your questions were much better than mine. So thank you very much for attending this session. And just a few announcements before you leave. We have a webinar coming up next week, Tuesday, on the 24th of June, which is looking at policy and regulatory responses to self-supply. If this is something you are interested in, we have another webinar in this series in 2025. And also moving on to the next slide, just as a reminder, please, there's going to be a short survey that will be sent to you for you to fill out. Just to give us feedback on the session. What can we improve? What could we do better? What did we do great? Let us know when you get that survey. And also, thank you very much for coming to this session. Remember, there's going to be all the presentations, all the slides are going to be shared on the RWSN website. Even this particular presentation will be available. So I think on that note, I just want to say thank you. I think that is the last slide. Yes, all the webinar presentations will be available on our website as well as Vimeo. Thank you, Amy, Marlene, and Bapon for the invaluable contribution. And thank you for your time and being with us here at RWSN Data for Action Group, where we have just finished the webinar on making WASH data work for unlocking climate financing. Take this knowledge, go out there and use data to unlock financing for the great work that you are all doing. And on that note, thank you very much and have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Thank you.